friends, it's Stephanie here with the Only God podcast, sharing stories only God could write. And today I am here. I'm so excited. We've been trying to record this for a while with my dear friend, Whitney Lane Ward. Hey, Whitney.
Hi, Steph. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you for joining. And I always start off with my guest is for you to share our Only God connection. How did we meet?
All right. Well, this is such a random way that you know it can only be of God, the way that we
Right.
met. It was in 2019, and we were both at the Right to Publish writing conference, and we just randomly was standing in a line, like, and was standing beside each other, and just we striked up a conversation, and we just immediately clicked, and we ended up sitting together, having meals together, and striking up this really cool friendship. And even so much so that my mom was going to come and pick me up. She was like an hour away at her sister's house, maybe a little bit longer. And she was dreading driving through Chicago because you got to know, we live in a very rural area. So that was just a lot. It gave her almost a nervous breakdown trying to get me. So you graciously offered to drive me to your house so my mom wouldn't have to come all the way through Chicago to get me. And I feel like that drive just solidified so much of our friendship, and we've been good friends ever since.
We've been good friends ever since. And I do think that was even an only God thing that, this is where I think my giving journey always comes in, is like that was going to be my gift of the day. Like you were just sharing with me that your mom was going to have to come pick you up in just a little bit. And I think this is good for the viewer to remember of there was no reason why I couldn't have offered you that gift of like, hey, do you want to just ride with me? Because I
Yeah,
knew where your mom was coming from. It
yeah,
was actually probably a 2.5 hour drive, and she'd be going like right by where my house was. And so
right.
it's
Yeah,
like the gift of offering, like seeing the opportunity. Don't be scared of like,
yeah,
okay, what if she says no? Thinking about riding with a stranger, and
yeah.
you're right. Like, and then I got to meet your mom, which was so fun.
Yes, yes,
And
it
I've
was.
developed a friendship with her.
Yeah,
I think the
yeah,
other thing too is what's interesting is even God's timing because you and I had attended the year before, I think the writers conference at Taylor University. Hadn't
yeah,
you been at
yeah.
Taylor?
Yes, we
Yeah,
did.
and I remember seeing you, but we never connected. I
We
connected with a
did.
couple of other ladies. And
Yeah.
so I just like always wonder with God, it's like, okay, why didn't we connect then? And why did we
I get
connect
that.
now?
Yeah.
So I want to jump into your only God story and just Whitney, I will say, has one of the most incredible stories I have ever heard. She is a true walking miracle. And jump right in wherever you want to start and share your
All
story.
right. Well, it's been a long and winding journey with a lot of twists and turns, but God has been faithful every step of the way, and I hope through my story the viewers can see that and that He can do the same for them. Just work out all the details of what may seem uncertain and a lot of unknowns. But yeah, I'll just start right from the beginning. When I was born, I had club feet, dislocated hips, despite being a C-section baby. I weighed 4 pounds, 9 ounces, full term. Thankfully, the hips and the feet, they were fixed with braces and casts. But as I got older, I battled pneumonia, sinus infections, ear infections. I was a severe asthmatic. And it was very odd, but my pediatrician just told my parents, some kids, it takes a while for their immune system to get stronger. And Whitney's obviously one of those kids. Um, but when I was 6 years old, we found out that was not the case. One morning, I woke up with excruciating pain in my knees. They were red, they were hot. I couldn't walk for several hours. The next day I could walk, but it was with a severe limp, and I also spiked a fever of 105. So my parents were urged by the pediatrician to take me to Cincinnati Children's. And it was discovered there that I had septic arthritis. It was treated. I responded very well to the treatment. But what that diagnosis led to was the doctors finding that there was a much bigger issue. My blood counts, what wasn't supposed to be high was high, what wasn't supposed to be low was low. And I was tested for so many diseases: lupus, leukemia, MS, like everything. But everything came back negative, which was good. You know, you didn't want to have those
Right.
things, but without a diagnosis, there was no clear treatment path. And so my my treatment was trial and error at best. And so my doctors just could only go with their gut on what they, thought, hey, maybe we'll throw this, we'll do that, like whatever we can just to keep her system from deteriorating. So several doctor's appointments and tests later, my doctors were able to give me a very broad diagnosis of autoimmune hemolytic anemia complicated with combined immune deficiencies. And that was very broad. It was basically, we don't know what it is. We just know it's in that family.
In these
And
categories, right.
categories, but we have no clue like what kind it is. So again, my care was trial and error at best, but God did bring the right doctors in my life because they never knew what they were dealing with, but they did everything exactly right, and which is a miracle. But in 2010, my immunologist told me at an appointment that he sent my case to the National Institutes of Health. Most people know it as the NIH, so that's what I'll refer to it going forward. But so the NIH, they had discovered this new disease, and I had a lot of similarities to it. And so he sent my case to this doctor. Her name was Dr. Sue, and he wanted me to be prepared that I might get a phone call from them. And so eventually I did get a call, and I fit the protocol of this disease. And so the nurse, she told me, we want you to come for a visit, and we want to see if you have this newly discovered disease. But just to prepare you, that we'll probably never figure out what is wrong with you. You'll just be valuable research to us. And I understood why she said that. There was
Right.
probably other patients that got their hopes up because, I mean, you get this like once in a lifetime opportunity and you think, this is it, I'm going to get answers. And then when you don't, it just becomes, you become even more hopeless. And, like, okay, I thought I was going to get answers and maybe get better quality of life. So I understood why she said that. But
Right.
I
Can
just
I
had
ask a
this feeling.
question?
Yes, ma'am.
Two is okay, if you're okay with discussing this just for the audiences, how old were you when, you're getting ready one, you hear this news of like, hey, you might have this newly discovered disease and you're
Yeah.
going to be going to the NIH. How old were you at this time?
So in 2010, I would have been 22, but I didn't actually go because it takes like a while because they have to do preliminary blood tests to see if they even can bring you to the NIH because there's all
Okay.
these like guidelines with the protocol. So I didn't actually have my first visit until I was 23. So it
Okay.
was in August of 2011.
Okay. And I wanted to ask that question because I think it's important of you started having your inflammation, your septic arthritis when you were 6. And
Yes.
now you're 17 years later
Yeah.
of you working with doctors, going to
Yeah.
the hospital, constantly not knowing what's gone. I wanted the audience to hear this wasn't like a 3 year period for you. This had
No,
been a
no.
a couple of decades
Yeah.
almost battle for you.
Yeah.
And then also, just on the question of the newly discovered diseases, was there anybody else alive that had this?
Yes. Now I cannot remember how many.
Okay.
But there was some people alive. I even came in contact to one person at one time, and her sister had it before her. Sadly, her sister passed away from it because at that
Mhm.
point they didn't have enough research to know what would, cure it, or at least, give them the quality of life. And that
Right.
ended up being a bone marrow transplant.
Okay.
And so the sister who they discovered it, and she, her sister passed away, but, they were able in time to know what needed to happen. So she got a bone marrow transplant, and she's alive and she's doing well.
Okay. Sorry.
So,
Move on with your story. I wanted to pause that
yeah,
just to give
no,
some
I love
base
that.
level of where we're at.
Yeah, and I do want to add to that. I think I'm glad you brought this up because um with treatment over those years, my parents had to decide at different points in my life, were they going to allow doctors to try new experimental treatments, because at that time that's all there was. It was either
Right.
this is the last thing we can do, or she's going to slowly deteriorate. And thankfully, the thing that they did that was extremely experimental at that time, it did give me the quality of life that I needed to get to the point where I could get to the NIH.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. So yes, so I did go to the NIH, but I did not end up having that disease. It was called Doc 8. But thankfully I was fascinating enough to Dr. Sue that she wanted to keep me, and create a whole new protocol, which, I mean, that's a miracle in of itself, because protocols are, they're not like just easy. It's not like going to a hospital where you can choose your doctor, you can say, I have this issue, can you help me? It's research based. There's clinical
Right.
mixed in with it, but it's research based. So you have to fit a certain amount of the criteria to even be considered as a patient. So she created this protocol for me. And so this was probably spring of 2012 is when I knew she created this protocol. And it would have been November of 2013. I went for a visit, and I was introduced to a young doctor at this time. His name was Ian Lamborn, and he was getting his MD and PhD in immunology. And he had come to Dr. Sue's lab to work on his dissertation, and he was given my case. And so during this time, I discovered from Ian that he actually found what had been causing my disease all these years. And it was a rare gene mutation. And so at that point, I would have been 24. And he discovered this gene mutation. It had mutated at some point while I was growing in my mother's womb. And I was the first person in the world to be discovered with this disease, which is cool. It's not on anyone's vision board, of course. Like my dream in life is, to be the pioneer of a disease. Um, but when you've had so many ups and downs, you kind of feel validated when you get this diagnosis, because over the years, there's people that don't believe you. You're either
Right.
faking, you're not as sick as you are, and you don't look sick. Why are you getting all these accommodations? And so it was really, a feeling of, okay, yes, I'm seen, I have this diagnosis now, and it's real, and people can see this. But the cool thing was that because Ian had discovered the gene mutation, my case would become the subject of his dissertation. And again, like all these, like, what? Like, I didn't dream of this, but this is really cool, you know?
I want to pause here just as somebody who's like making a film right now. It's just like I feel like God's setting you up for like this incredible story. You know, it's like
Aw.
bringing in the characters that are going to help you along the journey. You know what I mean? Like you're
Yeah,
this
yeah,
main character and you're
yeah,
getting ready to go on this journey that you like you said is you
exactly.
never planned for this. You never
No,
like
no,
said
no. Yeah. It did feel a little surreal, and like that, and I'm like, no one's gonna believe this, you know. But it happened. It happened. I have the pictures to prove it. It's published now in a research journal. But so what doctors did after that, like the normal procedure, is they went to different um, seminars and conferences trying to find another patient who had this illness. So, you know, they could have more research. They could know, okay, this is how the gene mutation presents. This is what to expect, you know, with this disease. But they searched a year and a half and they could not find anyone. And that was not normal. Typically, when you find the first patient, you have doctors that are like, yes, I have a patient just like this. And, you know, this is
right.
probably what they have. And um, so it's very unusual. And so what my doctors were surmising is that most babies are either stillborn or miscarried with this gene mutation. And so, how the NIH does their visits at the end of each visit, they have this big round table discussion with all of your doctors. And so, me and my parents were there, and they give you all the results and everything that they did that past like week. And they explained all this. And so, my mom looked at my main doctor and said, so, what you're saying is that all babies are a miracle, but my baby's even more of a miracle. And Dr. Sue said, yes, it's a miracle she survived her pregnancy. It's a miracle that she made it to, at this point, I think I was 26. And it's a miracle that she's doing as well as she's doing because this gene mutation is horrific. And I remember sitting there again, like, I can't believe this is my life.
Right.
Um, but I knew in the midst of that diagnosis was my purpose that God had given me, and that I could show others that miracles are real, and that if I can keep climbing the mountains before me that I had in front of me, then anyone could do that. And so, yeah, it was a surreal moment, and you know, I didn't know exactly how that was going to play out, but what God had in mind went Ephesians 3:20. It went exceedingly abundantly beyond what I could ever have thought or imagined. And so because I was the only one, they found out this gene mutation in 2013, and they didn't find anyone else until 3.5 years later.
Oh
And
wow. How did they
yeah,
find that person?
um, just continue to search, put
Mm,
out like to colleagues, and
right.
that person was actually in Australia.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
amazing that they found somebody like not even in the US, like out of the country.
yeah, yeah. Well, and that's the crazy thing. There's only I think 5 or 6 of us in the U.S. The rest of the patients are in different countries.
Okay.
So, so that makes it even more of a miracle that I was the first one to be discovered with it.
Right. Wow.
So, because I was the first one and it took 3.5 years, you know, I'm the only one who's working with my team. I'm giving the blood. I'm doing the test. Like I am it, which
And
was
Whitney,
cool.
do you want to share like a little bit of like what all the testing that you go through? It's not just like, hey, I'm just going to give some blood. Like it's pretty intense
Yeah,
testing
it
that,
is. It is. It
and
is.
it's
So
voluntary, right? Like you don't have to do this.
no, I don't. I don't. But you know, the reason I did it for several reasons. You know, I knew eventually they could find better treatment, not, and it would help me and other people. But also, this gene mutation is dominant, so there's a chance that I could pass it on to my children. And so, of course, I'm not a mother yet, but at some point I want to be, and I want to give them their best chance of a
Mhm.
quality of life if I would pass it on to them. And have been able to open those doors where when I do
Right.
have children, that the medication is in place. They know what to do to keep them from having to go through the things that I went through.
Right.
So there were several reasons why I decided to go through these awful, awful tests. But I will tell you one that is the most bizarre. So it was a blister study test, okay? And so what they did is there was this like plastic contraption type thing. And it had so I think it was like 6 holes on one side and then six, so a total of like 12 holes. And they put it on your forearm and they suction it. So they're making blisters. And then after they do that, it's really weird, okay? So after they do that, they take it off and the holes, they aren't like you can, put things down in them. They're open. And so they suctioned that for about an hour and then they took it off and then they took a needle in the blisters and they took out the fluid. And then they put the cylinder thing back on and then they squirted the fluid from the blisters into each open wound. And then they wrapped it up and it had to stay on my arm for the whole night. Now, what was this going to show them? I'm sure that's, what everyone is wondering. What in the world is this going to tell them? But this is what it told him. So, a part of my disease is my white blood count stays astronomically high. Like its base is between 22 and 23,000. And so they wanted to see would the white blood cells do what they're supposed to do and come to my body's defense. And so part of my disease, it's a messaging problem. And so the white blood cells, like maybe a very small amount will go to the thing they're supposed to fight, but the rest of them sent to different parts of my body that do not need any assistance. So very little came to my aid with that. And that proved their hypothesis that there was a messaging problem and that my white blood cells don't do what they're supposed to do fully.
Wow.
So,
And was that painful?
oh, it was so painful. It wasn't
Yeah.
supposed to be, but my body reacts violently. The fine print stuff that
Yeah.
is, like 0.001 of happening, it happens to me.
Yeah.
So my hand actually swelled up because like it was how tight, but it shouldn't have
Yeah.
been, it was a mess, but it showed them what what they needed to know, and they're like, this has never happened before.
Well, and that's why I wanted you to share it because it's
Of
not
course.
like you were giving blood. I mean, you were
Yeah.
doing things that were painful, that caused reactions that you didn't expect. Like, you have gone to great lengths to not only help yourself, but
Yeah.
help those that are going through it now and those that come behind you. It's just
Exactly.
amazing. But I think God has anybody who meets Whitney in person, and you can probably see because I want to get into like what you've done the whole time you've had this disease. And I know there's like the ending that I want you to share that you got to do, but
Yes.
it's like it is, I feel like God has given you that determination, that persistence, that this is going to cause pain, but I can see through the suffering of who
Yes.
it's going to
Yeah.
help. And you're someone that I feel like always is moving forward as opposed to like looking back or focusing on like your problem at hand. It's just
Yeah.
like, how do I address it? What do I need to do and move forward? And I want people to hear that, because there's going to be people that listen to this one that they might be going through challenging times. There also might be people who are just stuck in a woe is me. And then I want them to hear like your story and be like, oh my gosh, if Whitney
Yeah.
all this and
Yeah.
still to live the life that you have, it's incredible. So back to your story.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So like this is it's funny you mentioned a movie because I feel like this ending is something you would see in a movie, where it's like, no, this would never happen in real life. You know, you see movies like that because even I was sitting there, I mean, like, no one's going to believe this. So, like I said, because I was the only one with my team and working with them, they gave me two amazing opportunities. So, Ian, he invited my family and I to attend his research dissertation at the University of Pennsylvania. And then, because they knew I was a creative writer, they asked me to help come up with a name for this new disease. So, you know, back in the day, like years ago, when it came to naming something, you might name it after the doctor who discovered it or the patient that had it. But that's not how they do it anymore. They come up, there's like a very specific like protocol. So they come up with an acronym, and then each letter in the acronym stands for a prominent symptom of the disease.
Okay.
That way, when med students, residents, like doctors, are trying to assess and figure out what is wrong with someone, the name has the symptoms
Yeah, that
of
makes sense.
the disease. Yeah. So it had to be an acronym of, you know, a real name, acronym, and but it had to be scientific. But I also wanted it to have hope attached to it because I believe that, you know, the names that we attach to something, it breathes life into it. And so, you know, be honest, like our disease has a lot of hopelessness and fear and uncertainties attached to it. That's, I mean, that's just, you know, that's not being a Debbie Downer, that's just the
Right.
truth.
The
And
reality of it.
so, yeah, it's real. And so I wanted, you know, the first thing that they thought about, you know, when they hear their disease or say it is hope. And so the name that I loved the most was MAGIS syndrome, MAGIS. Magis means more in Latin, and it also references a Latin phrase, to the greater glory of God, which I thought was perfect
Yeah.
because anyone who be diagnosed with this are miracles, because scientifically we should have never existed.
Right.
And um but you know, I resigned myself to the fact that it probably would not be chosen. I was just very honored to even get to help with it because they even because there was like a group of doctors who had worked on this disease for years. Um, not just the ones I saw, but the ones in the lab doing like the experiments and you know that type of thing.
Yeah.
And they even gave me their ideas. It was kind of funny. One that they came up with was gain syndrome, and I was like, no, this sounds like laundry detergent. That's like, you might not choose any of mine, but please do not choose gain. Like, no. But but of course, yeah, I resign myself, like, probably will not be chosen. So the day of Ian's dissertation, it really was just an electric atmosphere. You know, you have all these famous prominent doctors that are there and med students who are excited to hear, you know, this about this new disease. And so Ian, he shared everything about the disease, what patients could expect, what goes on with the body and what it attacks. And then he got to the end and he wanted to thank everyone who had gotten him to this day. And he said he especially wanted to thank me because I understood that all the bizarre tests, like the blister study tests and all the blood, everything that I had done for them would not be in vain and wouldn't only help me, but it would help others who would eventually be diagnosed with this disease. And then he proceeded to get a bouquet of flowers behind the podium and he offered them to me with a hug, which just really validated even more because I did put myself through a lot of pain and, discomfort. So it was really nice that he recognized that.
Right.
Yeah, and so, but then he's like, but we do have one more announcement to make, and that is what the name of this new disease will be. And he proceeded to tell the audience that the name that they decided to go with was MAGIS syndrome. And oh my goodness, my mom was on one side, my sister was on the other side of me. I was elbowing them and they chose my name, they chose my name. And it was so exciting because in that moment I realized that all I had been through had not been in vain. And because if I could help others realize that God sees you and he has a purpose in the midst of the pain. And if you just keep climbing, you can have that hope and you can have those rewards and those blessings that God has for you. And so to have that purpose and to be able to share it and to give hope, that's the most amazing feeling because I feel like I'm a part of something bigger than
Right.
myself. But it was even so cool because after Ian was done, what they do is all the general audience leaves, and then Dr. Sue, because that was his mentor who he worked
Right.
under, and his board, they stayed and they would ask him questions, whatever they saw that needed expounded upon. But
Sure.
as I was walking
Basically
out,
defending, right? That's when they have to defend their
basically defending it,
dissertation.
defending it exactly. But as I walked out, I passed Dr. Sue, and she's like, "Did you realize we chose your name?" And she was so excited too. I was like, "Yes, I'm so excited." So it was just cool that they were excited as well. And it was funny because a nurse at the NIH just recently she said, "Hey, did you know that Magis has?" She either said spiritual undertones or religious like themes or whatever. And I said, "Yeah, I did know that." She said, "That is so perfect for you," and I thought that was so sweet that
Did
they
she
they
know
like
that you had named it?
she did, yeah,
Oh,
but
okay.
like faith and hope,
Right. Yeah, yeah,
aspect.
yeah.
But I don't think they realized at first that it had those.
Right.
So kind of,
Yeah.
which
That makes sense.
yeah, and to be honest, I didn't tell them because I didn't want them to just focus on that aspect of it and not
Yeah,
give
that
it.
makes
I wondered if they knew. And the fact now that I know that they knew and they still went with it because of the message, just like, okay, this is great. I'm glad that they figured it out on their own and
right.
saw it, and I did not have to kind of cram it down their throat, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no,
But,
it does. I want to pivot a little bit
mm,
from like your journey. I mean, this was decades in the making,
yes,
of you discovering this. And I also want the audience to know is like I mean, I know since I have known you, like you said, 2019
yeah,
is you still have a lot of challenges. You're in the hospital a lot, you get
yeah,
sick a lot.
hmm,
So even though you had these discoveries and they're working
yeah,
on it, like just shortly or briefly, like share a little bit about like your battle still continues to this day.
yeah, yeah. Well, so I'm on medication, and that's helping. But the thing is it doesn't reverse anything. So like the damage of what this disease has done, still exists. It stops the progression, but I still have the issue. So like I have arthritis, chronic sinusitis, I have colitis, I have endocrine issues. So it's not a gene mutation that only affects like one area. It
Right.
affects a lot of different functions of the body. And so I've had over 30 surgeries, and 10 of those alone have been sinus surgeries because of the inflammation. Like last year, I had to be admitted for pneumonia. Um, and so there's just those different, things. In the winter, I mentioned I was an asthmatic, and thankfully, I'm not an all year round asthmatic anymore.
Yeah.
But in the winter, when I get those respiratory issues, it does stir everything up. And I still have to take a treatment every 6 months that, so like my illness is kind of a double whammy because it has autoimmune components and it also has immune components. And so my disease, it looks at things like we talked about with the white blood cells that should not, it attacks its own self. And so that's why the B cells of my body, they always have to stay at 0, or else my body will start attacking itself, my hemoglobin will drop, and just a lot of issues. But then because I get, basically my immune system, wiped out with the medication I take every other week, I have to take. And the cool thing, I mean, COVID was awful, but there was awareness raised through it, and one of those things was plasma. And like before that was even a thing people knew, before COVID, I was taking that. And
Okay.
so it kind of raised awareness of how important it is. And so I take that every other week to replenish the B cells that Rituxan wipes out.
Right.
So yes, it makes it really, really complicated. Um,
Right. You're still
so
in this battle. I want to pivot because now everybody's heard not only the journey that you've been on, and I know you're not supposed to ask a lady her age, but I think it's important for your story of like, how old are you now?
I know I don't look it,
I know you
but
don't.
August 1st, I will be 38.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. So you're
Yeah.
38. We're a decade apart.
Yes.
Um, and you're 38. And so I just wanted to pause there and say that because you go from you're 38 to basically having a disease that for, as long as they know, nobody's survived it. And you've survived 38 years. And
Yes.
now I would love for people to share like, all the things that you've done, from once you graduated high school, what's your journey been, and how God has continued to use you is, I think this is the part beyond of like them discovering your disease and you getting to name it, but really, you've really allowed God to use you in your story.
Thank you. And I do want to say that there is now, I believe the last I heard was 25 of us
Oh, wow.
living. Um,
Yeah.
the first little boy though that I mentioned, that was the second one to be discovered after me. He did pass away sadly from the disease. So there's 24 of us, I believe, and only 6 of us are in the United States.
And then are you the oldest?
Thankfully, no. I
Okay.
was for the longest time. It was kind of, disconcerting.
Mhm.
But now I think there's someone in their 60s. And the crazy part about this gene mutation is there's things that we all have, but there's some things that might affect one patient, but it
Right.
doesn't affect the other. Like I
Okay.
don't have heart issues like some other patients do.
Mhm.
I don't have cognitive issues like some other patients do. So
Right.
there's different things, but the oldest I believe is in his 60s, and
Okay.
he actually lives in New York.
Okay.
So
Wow.
uh so yes, I'm not sure who the youngest is, but it was really cool because last year when I was at the NIH, the third person who was discovered, she's from France, and I've been in contact with her since 2016. And
Wow.
I got to meet her and her parents last year, and I like toured, like gave them a tour, was their tour guide around DC and it was so much fun. It was a blast. But I just wanted to throw that out there that, I didn't want them to think that I was still the only one.
Yeah.
There's about 25 of us now.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, it is definitely. But yeah, through it, God has just opened up doors. And even though it's not something you would wish on yourself, like to have something like this, to have to walk with through life, some of the opportunities I've gotten would have never happened if I didn't have this story. And so I have published 5 books, and a lot of them are have to do with, whether it's like specifically in the medical world, or an underdog of sorts who has to rise above something. So it kind of raises awareness on empathy, compassion, and not everyone is going to look the same or have the same circumstances. So so yeah, I've published 5 books. I've been able to share my story all over the country and even overseas, when I've gone on mission trips, and I've been on 6 mission trips. So I've been able to do that. I Because of the new medication I am on, I am able to hold down a full-time job now, and I'm a high school English teacher. This past December, I graduated with my master's in education. And so, yeah, God's just done amazing things. And, he's opening up doors for, like, to expand my ministry, and, to be able to be on podcasts, to go to different, places and speak. I was a part of, I can't say much about it, but I was casted to be on a documentary, and that's scheduled to come out in fall of 2026. Basically, it's a documentary about people doing things that no one else has done. And
Right.
so when I told these, them, yeah, I named a disease. They're like, you might work for this. So
I'm the first.
yeah. Um, so yeah, I'm just really excited to see what God is doing and how he's opening doors, and just, what he's going to do in the future.
What I love too, as long as I've known you, but then even knowing, your backstory of you going to Asbury and you had to
Yeah.
take some time off, but then you get back into school, and is you've always had a goal. Like every time I've known you is, that goal of like writing a book and publishing a book, which then now you've done 5. You had that goal of getting to work full time,
Yes.
which that was something that you couldn't do for the longest time just due to
Mhm.
your hospital visits and all of that came with it. I remember when you telling me you're like, I'm gonna start working on my master's. I'm like, are you kidding me? But can you talk a little bit about that? Because I've just always been like so in awe of you. Of you have not, I think it would be, and maybe you speak to this, I don't want to speak, but I even think like, Whitney, it would be okay to be like, I don't have to do these things. I have this disease. It's
Yeah.
tiring. It's wearing. I've got
Yeah.
this treatment. So, can you tell me and the audience really of like your mindset of always setting goals and working towards them, and how has that helped you in your recovery and your journey?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that question. So I've always been a person who believes I'm going to focus on what I can do, not what I can't do. And, when I do that, I realize there's a lot more that I can do than what I can't do. And, you know, when you are someone who does have more sick days, more down days than your average person, I feel like if you don't set goals, then you are going to be depressed. You are going to feel hopeless. And you might not be able to move at the pace as an healthy, 100% healthy person can, but knowing you have that goal and you can inch towards it, it gives you hope. And so that's why always setting goals for myself, because I don't want to feel like, oh, well, I can't do this because of this mountain in front of me. And I've realized I can do it. I might have to take a different course than other people can. But it is possible. With God, all things are possible. So that's why for me, it gives me purpose, it energizes me, and it kind of like when I am having those down days, it helps me see forward that, when I'm feeling better, I can pursue this. I can, go after this. Because I mean, that's what keeps anyone going is a purpose. And so I feel like that's why I'm always, setting goals, is because I don't want to ever feel that hopelessness that I would totally understand why someone might with this illness. But it's also the faith component. Having that faith, having that hope of a better life and God opening up doors and making beauty from ashes, that's what keeps me going. And, I don't ever want to be a person who just gives up, if that makes sense. Now, with that being said, I have, as I've gotten older, learned to give myself some grace. Because when I was younger, it was, I could never say, uh, oh, yeah, I'm not doing the greatest. Because if I said that, then that meant, okay, you lack faith, or, I can't, it's going to look like I can't handle this to people. And so, and now I'm like, okay, if I need to take extra days to rest so I can pursue my goals, then I can't care what people think. I have to do what I know because only I can know. No one else can. So yeah, as I've gotten older, I've realized, okay, there is a balance to this. I'm not going to go, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. Like I'm okay. I'm in the hospital with a low hemoglobin. I'm okay. Like it's
I'm glad you brought it up because literally I was going to ask you about that. And that's one thing that I have seen with you over the years is you do have this balance of taking rest, taking time. Even us trying to get this scheduled is we've been trying to get this interview scheduled for months. And I think it was in the winter where we had it
yeah,
scheduled and you're just like, Steph, I've got this. I don't feel well. And
yeah,
even as you were starting to feel well, it was like my voice, I'm still, and I love that about you. But I want to say that for the people who are on the other end, like for
mm,
me, I didn't get frustrated with you. It's like, okay, great. We'll just keep working at this. We just kept, and it's showing that other person who does need the time, who does
yeah,
need the rest,
yeah,
grace. And I've always been of the mindset, especially with the podcast, of like, if this a person's supposed to be on my podcast, God will work it out. They will come back around. Or,
yeah,
like we prayed even before the call is like, God, this timing is perfect today versus
yeah,
maybe if we were doing it. And so I've recognized that in you. And what's cool about it is I've also been able to see is like, even though you take the rest, is you're still accomplishing your goals. You're still moving forward. Has that been an aha moment for you of like used to in the past where you felt like you just had to go, go, go? And now that, you do take that time is you're still like doing what God's called you to do?
yeah. Yeah, I totally, yes, I feel 100% like that. And what I've come to terms is, like I don't want to seem like I'm not dependable, or people can't count on me. But what I've come to realize is, okay, am I going to push through this and maybe not give 100% because I'm not feeling well? Or how about we move this in until I am feeling well and I can give you my absolute best, most
Right.
100%. And, God expects our best.
Right.
So that's what I've had to come to terms with. I can't control the timing of when I don't feel well. And, I wish I could. I can't control what day it happens, when it happens, what time it happens. But what I can control is, like, I'm going to take this rest so I can be at my best and accomplish more. I also am reminding myself too, even though I'm doing better, I still have more of a weakened immune system. I get tired easily. And, I'm a teacher. So, like, that's exhausting. And so I keep reminding myself of that. I don't have a perfect immune system.
Right.
So I'm going to need more rest than some people do, and that's okay. It doesn't make me any less dependable. I will get it done when I can, and when I do get it done and when I can do it, you will know I'm doing it when I can give you my all.
What's some goals that you're working on? What are you focused on right now that you
Okay,
can talk about?
well, I have no clue when this is going to happen, but I do eventually want to get my doctorate. That's been a dream of mine for years, since I was like a freshman in college. It will eventually happen, but I got other things I got to tackle first. So I would love God to expand my ministry, where I maybe do some more speaking engagements and eventually write a few more books. And as work goes, we are expanding some classes at the school I work at, where I'll be teaching creative writing classes, some journalism. I'm bringing back the school paper, which I'm very, very excited about. And the kids are excited too. Some of them are leaving to go to, I don't know if you have this in Indiana, but it's like a career technical center,
Yep.
trade school. Yeah. And so some of them are leaving and they're like, of course we're leaving when they're bringing back some cool stuff. So yeah, which that makes you feel good when they think like, oh, this is going to be a cool thing that we're adding. So
No.
we have that coming, and I do have my church's youth camp that I work in every year, and that is coming up in a couple weeks. I write the Vespers, and no one knows what a Vesper is, or at least what we call Vespers. It's like a spiritual, thought-provoking drama mini play. So I write those scripts for it
And
and
I love
help.
how you say it. Like, I write the Vespers. Like, not a big deal. I'm just
Yeah.
in charge of that. And then you're like, it's like a drama, like a play. I'm in charge of it.
Well, I have my co-director, so we
Yes, yes.
it's a team thing. So
I
we both
love
have
that.
our individual talents, like me and my partner, and that's cool because we come together, and it fits perfectly. We always say it really is like how it's described in the Bible, like a body. This person was given this gifts, and this person was given this gift, so when they come together, they can accomplish so much more together.
I love that. I think that's a great place to stop, is just that thought of thinking about the body of Christ and that we are all given gifts, but we have to use the gifts that we are given. And I think get emotional thinking about it, but there are very few people like you, Whitney, who really do use the gifts that God has given them, that use the day that God has gave you, the time that God has given you. And I know you didn't say it, but you are more than your mountains, and that is the title, I think, of your children's book. And right, am I right?
You are right. It's more than your mountains is children's book, and then more than my mountains is my memoir.
Right. And I love that. So I'm going to wrap up today. Thank you, Whitney, and thank you for the audience to listening to the Only God podcast, sharing stories only God could write. Hey, friends. Thank you for joining me today on the Only God podcast. I hope today's story encouraged your faith and reminded you that God is still writing our stories each and every day. If you were inspired by this episode, please share, subscribe, and tell a friend. And to stay connected with me and find out about all my books and resources and events, go to shineforwardcreative.com. Have a fabulous day.